All right, today we are cracking open a 17th century masterpiece that dissects one of the most powerful stories ever told. It's all about two guys who go to the same temple to pray to the same God. One's a pillar of the community, the other is, well, a total disgrace. But as the writer John Bunyan was about to show us, the one who actually goes home right with God is going to shock you.
So let's start with the story itself, the source material. It's a really simple scene, right? Two men walk into a temple. One is a Pharisee, the religious elite. The other, a tax collector, a publican, basically a social pariah. Their prayers couldn't be more different, and it sets the stage for this incredible, high-stakes spiritual showdown.
Okay, look at this contrast. The Pharisee's prayer is basically his spiritual resume. He's listing off all the terrible things he isn't and all the good things he is. But the publican, he's only got 7 words. It's not a resume. It's a raw, desperate plea for help. For John Bunyan, the entire universe of faith is packed into the gap between these two prayers. So this is the million-dollar question, isn't it? Who actually went home justified? I mean, based on the reputations, the answer seems completely obvious. But Bunyan's whole point is that the real answer is designed to flip everything we think we know about being good completely on its head.
To really get what's going on here, we have to understand who these two guys were in their world. I mean, they weren't just two random dudes. They represented the absolute extremes of their society.
So on one side, you've got the Pharisee. These guys were seen as the best of the best, the pinnacle of religious devotion. Everyone looked up to them. And then you have the publican. He's a tax collector, working for the hated Roman occupiers. People saw them as the absolute worst, traitors who got rich by squeezing money out of their own people. Total opposites.
Okay, so let's zoom in and really dissect the prayer of the guy everyone expected to be God's favorite, the Pharisee. Just listen to these words again. Notice he's not actually asking for anything. Bunyan points out something brilliant here. The Pharisee isn't really praying to God. He's kind of praying with himself. It's a performance, a speech about how great he is, just delivered in God's general direction.
So Bunyan says the Pharisee basically has this 2-step formula for being righteous. Step 1, define how good you are by pointing out everyone who is worse than you. Thieves, cheaters, and oh yeah, that guy over there. Step 2, list your religious accomplishments. Fasting, tithing. It's a righteousness that's totally built on comparing and performing.
Now, here's the crucial part for Bunyan. The Pharisee's fatal flaw wasn't that he did good things. The problem was that he trusted in those good things to make him right with God. His entire spiritual confidence was built on his own achievements, which turned his prayer into nothing more than a boast.
All right, now let's do a total 180 and look at the prayer from the man who knew he had absolutely nothing good on his resume to show.
That's it. That's the whole thing. But Bunyan says these few words have everything the Pharisee's long speech was missing: honesty, desperation, and a complete reliance on mercy, not on merit.
And it wasn't just his words. His whole body was praying. He stands way off in the distance, like he knows he doesn't belong. He won't even look up to heaven, a classic sign of shame. And he beats his chest, which was a way of showing deep grief and sorrow. His posture is screaming exactly what his words are whispering.
So, we've got our two guys, the man who thinks he's righteous and the man who knows he's a sinner. The stage is set. Who gets the not guilty verdict from God?
And it really comes down to this stark choice, doesn't it? The man who is so sure of his own goodness versus the man who is completely crushed by his own sinfulness. Well, the story tells us that only one of them actually found what they were looking for.
And boom, here's the twist that turns everything upside down. It's the publican, the despised, traitorous tax collector who goes home justified. And the Pharisee, the model of religious piety, he's rejected. It's a complete and total reversal of what anyone would have expected. This right here is the punchline. It's the moral of the whole story. And it lays out this fundamental law of the spiritual world that is the exact opposite of how our world works. If you lift yourself up, you'll be brought down. But if you humble yourself, you will be lifted up. Now, to really understand why this verdict isn't as crazy as it sounds, we have to get to the core of Bunyan's argument. He says this story isn't just about two men, it's about two totally different types of righteousness. This chart just lays it out perfectly. On one side, you have the Pharisee's self-righteousness. Where does it come from? His own actions. What does it lead to? Pride. And in God's eyes, Bunyan says, this stuff is like filthy rags.
But on the other side, you have what the publican was desperate for, God's righteousness. It's a gift, and what does it lead to? Humility and gratitude.
This brings us to the most important word in this whole discussion: justification. For Bunyan, this isn't about God making you feel good or giving you a reward. No, it's a legal term. Imagine God as a judge. Justification is when he bangs the gavel and declares you not guilty. In fact, he declares you perfectly righteous, not because of anything you did, but because the perfect record of someone else, Jesus Christ, has been credited to your account. The publican was justified because he stopped trying to defend himself and just threw himself on the mercy of the court.
And this is the absolutely terrifying conclusion that Bunyan comes to. Look, the Pharisee might have been a genuinely decent moral guy in a lot of ways. But his one huge sin, the sin of trusting in his own goodness to save him, was so bad that it poisoned everything else. It was the ultimate act of unbelief.
So let's bring this all home. Why does this analysis of a 2,000-year-old story, written by a guy over 300 years ago, still hit us right between the eyes today?
Well, here are the big takeaways Bunyan leaves us with. All the outward religious stuff we do is worthless without inner humility. True righteousness isn't something we can achieve, it's something we have to receive as a gift. And that's because God's standard is absolute perfection, something none of us can hit. The only way in, the only gateway to grace is humility.
And that leaves us with one last, really challenging question. It's pretty easy for us to listen to this story and point our finger at the Pharisee. But Bunyan's whole point is that the Pharisee's attitude, that quiet, nagging feeling of, well, at least I'm not as bad as those people, is the most dangerous spiritual trap of all. And it's one we can all fall into without even knowing it.